Hey, what's up guys? Brad with Squared Away Every Day, and today we're going to be taking a look at my one-year review on my Tesla Model 3 Performance. And really, this is the electric vehicle that kicked it all off for me. I currently now have a Tesla Model S Plaid. I have a Model Y Performance, and this is really the first EV I ever had, and it's the one that showed me how cool EVs could be, and Tesla's even more specifically. So we're going to be taking a look at this car. This is a 2018 Tesla Model 3 Performance, and it's very similar to any of the 2022s or 23s that you're going to be looking at on the market these days. And we'll talk about some of the subtle differences varying off of this 2018, and I'll talk about just the longevity of it, all that good stuff. So if you haven't had a chance yet, please go ahead and give me a like, give me a sub, and let's hop into it. All right, so for starters, you're probably thinking that is not a Model 3 Performance, and it is. This, to be more specific, is a Stealth Model 3 Performance. Tesla made less than 3,000 of these vehicles, and essentially what it means, there's a lot more that goes into it, but essentially what it means is it doesn't have the performance wheels, the performance brakes, the performance suspension. It does not have the performance carbon fiber spoiler, and it doesn't have the metal performance sport pedals, but it does have the motor that is going to put out the performance of a Model 3 Performance. So we'll talk about that in a different video. I'll link it up in the top if that video is already finished, but essentially that's what this car is a Model 3 Performance, and it is the Stealth variant. So let's kind of hop into it and start talking about the styling of the car to begin with. Now, me personally, I don't really like the look of the Model 3s. I'm just not a very big fan of them in general. I don't think they look all that great. And a big reason is they look kind of odd because Tesla is going for a low drag coefficient when they're making any of their cars, so that the cars perform better on a charge, so that you're going to get more range each time you charge that car. So that's kind of the idea of why the Teslas look the way that they do. And the newer Teslas are going to have this same satin black trim, same satin black handles, and it looks really, really cool. Now for me, this is a 2018 Model 3 Performance, and so it didn't have any of that. So I went ahead and I did satin black trim, satin black wheels. I did a copper metallic wrap. Yeah, believe it or not, that's a high temp wrap, and it lasted all year, as long as I've had the car, and it's lasted really, really nicely. I went ahead and tinted the headlights, the tail lights, and to me, this is how the Tesla Model 3 Performance looks really its best, is when it's just entirely blacked out. Now this is really going to be just subject to the individual and what you guys think looks good, but for me personally, I don't think they look overly great. Other than the headlights, I think the headlights look really cool, almost Porsche-esque when you're talking about the headlights on a Model 3. Okay, so let's talk about the performance of the Model 3 Performance and if it's really that good. And I will say this, for the price points you're going to be looking at for the Model 3 Performance, whether it's new or used, you could maybe pick them up at the very low end of like 45,000, at the very high end up to maybe 65, 70,000 brand new, depending on how you spec that vehicle out. And I will say this, in that price range, you really can't beat the 0 to 60 time. 0 to 60, you're looking at 3.1 seconds, which is very, very quick. When I first got this car, it like blew me away how fast it really was. So when we're talking just speed alone, which speed is the most important performance characteristic in my opinion, it is very fast for the money. Now when we talk about the car as a whole and how it actually performs with the torque that it has, with the speed that it has, I would say it's really, really reasonable. The torque stability of the car is very stable and smooth, whereas like my Model Y Performance, when you mash the pedal down, you get a little bit of, like if the steering wheel is barely turned one way or the other, the car will pull pretty hard one way or the other, whereas this one is very controlled. The torque stability is great, the acceleration is really great, the handling is really good, and to this point, I've been super pleased with the car, and it's still almost as fun as the day that I bought it. So that kind of brings me to the drivability of the car, just the handling in general. And I will say this, out of all the Teslas I own, and I own a Model S Plaid, I own a Model Y Performance, and now obviously this Model 3 Performance, this one handles probably the best out of all those cars. It's not just the way the suspension is or anything like that. It's just the size of the car is really, really good. It makes it for a super easy to drive car, even as fast as it is. You know, I let my mom drive this car, my mother-in-law, I've let everybody drive this car. And it's funny because when I was going to buy a performance car or sports car, I was looking at this and I was looking at a Porsche 911 Turbo that was like a 2005 or a 2006. I think it was a 2005, and there's no way I would have let somebody drive that car. First of all, it was manual and I just wouldn't have done it anyway, but this car is so easy to drive. I don't mind when people drive it and experience the car because it's just that drivable of a vehicle. And again, a lot of it has to do with the form factor, and then of course just the low center of gravity on these Teslas in general. All right, now before we start talking about the utility of the car and the cargo space and all that good stuff, let's talk about the range of the vehicle. Now, Tesla states that these cars have a range of low 300s, and I will say this, I've never gotten even close to 300 miles of range. It just hasn't happened for me. Now, I don't drive the car probably like a normal person would. I drive it a little bit quicker than probably the average Joe, but I will say this, I don't get anywhere close to 300 miles of range on it, but still, I have not had a problem with range anxiety or not getting to where I need to go. I can easily take a drive that's going to be maybe an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and I'm really not in any sort of position where I'm worried about range. I'm just not. And I just run off of a standard 110 charger. I don't have the fancy 220 or the, you know, the Nemo chargers or whatever you call it. I don't have any of that. I've got one 110 charger and I haven't had a problem with range at all. I would say my range to this point on a full charge, what the app estimates is, I think it's like 270 miles. So the car is a 2018. It means it's now 4 years old. And I think that's pretty decent for the car you've got. Now, this particular version here, I supercharge it all the time, and the previous owner also supercharged it almost daily. And so I think just knowing that the superchargers degrade the battery over time, I think still holding on to like a 270 mile range limit is really, really good. And again, I don't get close to 300. It's probably more in the ballpark of like 240, 250 miles. And that does depend on the season. If it's colder out, you're running the heat, you're running the seat heat, and you're going to get less range versus summertime where you're just running the AC. All right, now when we're talking about the just kind of the general utility or the cargo use of this vehicle, it's okay. It's not really that great. It's got a relatively big trunk for how small the car is. It's relatively big, but I will still say this, when you're making those runs to Costco or Home Depot or something like that, this is definitely not going to cut it. It's very small for the needs that I have anyway, and it's much smaller than like the Model Y, if you're familiar with that particular vehicle. Now, not to say that it's tiny, for the form factor of the car, it's a good size, but in terms of just utility space in general, it's really not that big. Now, the nice thing is on these cars is you do have a flap, so to speak, that can come up, and you've got some internal storage and you can put stuff down there, and you've got your frunk as well, which I personally have never used, but you got your frunk up there, and I don't know, I would say it's decent utility and cargo space, but it's nothing to write home about. All right, so quickly hitting on just the cabin in general inside the car. It's very minimalist. You've got pretty much nothing in here except for the stalks on the steering wheel, a couple of buttons on the steering wheel, and then you've got your big screen, of course, and that's pretty much it. You don't really have much else in terms of the actual cabin design. Now, the seats themselves, this particular model, I believe, is actually a leather seat, but now you're going to be finding a vegan leather seat, and to be honest with you, you really can't tell a difference. I've got both and I can't tell any difference at all, but the seats are very comfy and it gives you a good seated position and a good range of adjustability in the car to where you can sit just how you like, and it really makes you feel like you're in control of the car, especially just because of that form factor. It's just an easy car to drive in general. We've got just the classic stuff everybody knows about, like the ventless air, and you can go ahead and adjust the air however you want it to be, and it's just, there's no visible vents, it's just air colliding, and you can adjust the way that that collides, and you can drive the car as such, and the wind's gonna blow. Now the inside of the cabin is, I would say, like a medium to small size. It's not an overly big sized car inside. It's definitely enough for like one kiddo in a car seat and then 2 adult passengers. 4 passengers is okay. I wouldn't say it's overly large. Somebody 6 foot or taller probably would have a hard time in the back seats. And then of course we have the pano roof inside. Now this is split up. It's different than the Model Y is, and it's split up. So we have a pano section here, we have a pano section in the back, and then we have this B pillar going across the middle of the car there, and it's just really nice. It helps the car feel open and airy and just gives it a good feel. The sound system is really, really good, which most cars these days have really good sound systems. So the sound system is great. The heated seats, it's got heated seats in the passenger, the driver, and then all 3 back seats. The newer models are going to have a heated steering wheel as well, and that's all good and dandy. Okay, so let's talk about the tech of this Tesla Model 3 Performance. And to be honest with you, most of this stuff is really going to apply to any Tesla that you would buy as of 2022. I don't know what models are going to come out in the future and if they're going to be downgraded on autopilot or this or that, but as of now in 2022, every Tesla is going to have this set of characteristics, but it's stuff that we really shouldn't overlook that really makes Tesla one of the leaders, if not the leader, in the EV market just in general. And so let's just start talking about them. Now, one of them is going to be autopilot, and there's a difference between autopilot and full self-drive. Autopilot pretty much means I can go ahead, tap the stalk down 2 times, and the car is going to stay, like on the highway or on any road really, it's going to stay in its lane. It's going to keep distance from whatever I set, maybe 1 car length up to 7 car lengths distance, and it's going to maintain the speed and even turn around curves and stuff like that. It's not going to make right-hand turns or left-hand turns. And then we've got the regen braking. Regen braking, I think, is really, really overlooked when people are looking at different EV makers like Porsche does them, and all these different car companies do it, but I think the regen braking is really overlooked. And what that is, if you don't know, regen braking is essentially where you can drive with just the accelerator pedal alone. And so when you let off the accelerator, the car automatically, it'll start to like grip itself and it'll charge the batteries. And so your momentum slows down the car, and in return, it charges the batteries just a little bit. And the regen braking does work very, very good. Even coming down the mountain, I live in Colorado, coming down the mountain in Colorado, I can charge up to 2%, and that's just really, really cool. Now moving on to Sentry mode, this is also another characteristic of the car that I think everybody knows about, but it's just really underplayed at this point. And what it is it uses the right camera, the left camera, the front, and the rear to watch your car for you when you're driving, when you're parked. You can pull all this footage up, and so if you get into a fender bender, if somebody scratches your car or keys it, or you have somebody hits your car in the parking lot, you can get that footage and you can report it to the insurance company. It's super vital. Whereas in the past, something like a Viper security system or something like that was going to be really, really expensive. Not only that, but you can now see your cameras live. If you've got premium connectivity, you can see your cameras live, and you can check the cameras, what's going on with your car when you're not even parked around it, which is really, really cool. As we know, this is an electric car, and Tesla's always doing software updates. As of right now, I have another update that the car wants to do, and that just means that the car continues to get better and better over time. Now, this particular car just had an update to where if you put the blinker on, it will show your right camera in your blind spot on that right side, which is super nice, and that way you always kind of can see what's in your blind spot. Now, I do recommend always looking in your mirror and then checking that camera, and you're probably good to go after that, but that's just a really nice touch, and it just shows how awesome these electric cars are, that it's really hard to date them because we have all these upgrades and software updates we can do to them to where that they're staying current. Now, moving on to the Tesla app. This is also something that's really overlooked on the cars, and I think it's really kind of a shame because the app that Tesla has for your car is awesome. I mean, you can preheat the car, you can cool the car. This is all remote. You can preheat it, you can cool it, you can unlock it, you can start the car. You can look at your security cameras on the car, the Sentry mode. I mean, there's so much. You can honk the horn, you can flash the lights. There's so much stuff you can do that maybe some of it you don't want to do, but some of it, like you can defrost the windows. You don't even have to go out in your garage or in the driveway. You can I don't know. You could do a lot of stuff with the Tesla app that is just overlooked. Stuff like looking up the exact mileage, like when you go to get a tire rotation, you can just tell them right from your phone. Looking up the VIN number when you're talking to your insurance company. Stuff like that, to where it just makes the car super convenient and just easy to use on a big level. Now with that, we can do cool stuff like we can leave the climate control on when we leave the car. You can either do that via locking the climate control. You can put on dog mode if you've got your dog in the car, and it'll tell you on the screen, hey, yo, I'm gonna be back soon. Please don't bash out the windows. I'm coming back to the car, and the car is at this ambient temperature, which is really nice. Now with that, we've got an awesome huge screen in this car. It's really nice for the screen. The screen is nice in itself for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's really fluid. Even after 4 years of the car being in heavy use and being driven every day, it's still just as snappy as my brand new Model Y Performance. It's just as snappy as my brand new Model S Plaid. It's just a really good software system, and it's just really easy to use. It's quick, it's snappy, and it's not overly complicated. Now with that, when we go to charge our car, we can pull up Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, all these different apps which make it super awesome to just sit and hang out and burn time if you need to. You've got video games you can play on this thing, and you can use the steering wheel to do race games, and it's just a crazy car when it comes to the technology of it. And I think, you know, Tesla's been around a long time. I think a lot of people take it for granted. All right, so it's getting a little bit windy out here, and I'm just gonna wrap the video up. Let's say this, to say the least, the car is a 2018, and now having owned a 2021 Model Y, a 2021 Model S Plaid, I will say this, the cars hold up really well over time, and it doesn't feel like you're driving a 4-year-old car. And I know that sounds weird, but this is a tech car, and so to say, you know, anything from 4 years ago doesn't feel that dated is really something to be said. So in terms of, do I recommend the car? Do I like the car in general? Yeah, I really like the car, and it inspired me to take my journey to find more EVs and get into that world a little bit more and just kind of experience the EV world. Now, when we talk about the value of the car, the value is very good. We're talking a $50,000, $60,000 car that goes 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. It's safer than a Volvo. It's easy to drive. I mean, it's a great car. I mean, what else do you want me to say? It's a fantastic car, and I highly recommend it. It's probably one of my favorite Teslas to date that I have. No, it's one of my favorites. It's not my absolute favorite, but let's say this, there's only 4 in the lineup anyway to this point. So anyway, it's a great car. Go ahead and check it out. If you have any reservations about it, just go ahead and pick one up and you will not be disappointed. All right, if you liked the video, please go ahead and give me a like, give me a sub, and we'll see you in the next one.